Now begins the second greater phase of the 9-year plan. Dear friends, these words of the Universal House of Justice at the start of its Rizwan 2026 message induced in my heart yet again a profound appreciation of the value of an unprecedented surge in teaching the faith as a way to give a boost to the implementation of the divine plan. The idea of sharing some thoughts on this subject with the hope that by doing so friends may consider this within their own clusters arose during consultation with a few friends. I will touch today a bit on context and history, followed by a few thoughts about teaching. Baha'is believe that God has revealed the purpose of life, has shown us how to attain it, has sent Baha'u'llah to accompany humanity during this period of transition from its collective adolescence to its maturity, and has given mankind the assurance of divine assistance and the continuation of divine guidance. His revelation provides teachings that enable us to build the world based on unity and justice, empowers mankind, and provides the ways whereby people throughout the world can work together to achieve this noble goal. Baha'u'llah has assured us that the establishment of such a civilization is the unalterable destiny of mankind, and that nothing whatsoever in the whole of creation can thwart it. The betterment of the world has been a promise throughout history, whether in the dreams of philosophers and poets for a peaceful world, or in the prophecies of the religions of the past regarding the establishment of the kingdom of God on earth. With the coming of Baha'u'llah, the era of promise and prophecies has come to an end, and the era of fulfillment has begun. Baha'u'llah also tells us that God has two plans in operation, each designed in its own way to help humankind get closer to realizing its destiny. So how exciting it is that we live in the era of fulfillment. Baha'u'llah makes it clear that the entire body of mankind is the recipient of his message. He says, "The summons and the message which we gave were never intended to reach or to benefit one land or one people only. Mankind in its entirety must firmly adhere to whatsoever has been revealed and vouchsafed unto it. Then and only then will it attain unto true liberty." Today, tremendous efforts are being made by various groups all over the world to improve the lot of mankind. There is no lack of material resources that can contribute to the betterment of the world, provided they are properly used. However, the efforts to make such contributions are often frustrated by conflicting aims, by greed, by corruption, by mistrust, or by fear. The problem, in the words of the Universal House of Justice, is the need to educate human beings in the ultimate and most important purpose of life, and in how to weld the differences of opinion and outlook into a unified, constructive effort. The most urgent need of human beings is therefore to recognize the divine remedy and to learn how to collaborate constructively. As people learn and follow the teachings of Baha'u'llah, the House of Justice assures us their efforts will produce durable results. Whereas in the absence of these teachings, a lifetime of effort only too often ends in disillusionment and the collapse of all that has been built. This is why teaching the cause, spreading the divine remedy, is of the utmost urgency. Teaching clearly is an indispensable element of the plans of God in the era of fulfillment. The spread of science and technological knowledge in schools and among the world's population, friends, is essential towards attracting those interested in improving conditions of the material world through the advancement of science. The spread of the message of Baha'u'llah is also vital for reaching those who, once they hear it, want to support and be part of the plan of God for the betterment of the world through the application of spiritual principles that promote unity and oneness. To spread the message of Baha'u'llah throughout the world is a responsibility given to every individual. Baha'u'llah says it's the concern of the True One to reveal, and the concern of the people to spread what has been revealed. And again he says, it is incumbent upon every man of insight and understanding to strive to translate that which has been written into reality and action. So, seen in these statements is Baha'u'llah's invitation to all the peoples of the world, from every background and all circumstances, to participate in the process of translating his vision into action. Otherwise, how could the building of a world based on unity and oneness be successful if it did not benefit fully from the insights of those who have experienced bitter discrimination? How could a world based on justice be built without the full participations of people who have been the subject of countless injustices? And how could such a world be built without the insights resulting from raising generations of younger people who are to contribute not only to refining this process, but also to advancing the betterment of the world? Teaching the faith is meant to, therefore, 1. Increase the number of those who would recognize Baha'u'llah as the divine physician for this age, and thereby live a life that will allow their talents and resources to meet the needs of the cause of God. And 2. Assist millions of others attracted to the vision of Baha'u'llah and eager to fulfill their own aspirations and improve their lives by learning to translate his teachings into reality. The history of our faith is replete with stories of believers who have sacrificially responded to this command of Baha'u'llah. Individual teaching was the main approach to spreading the message during the heroic age. This effort began with the Letters of the Living. Then countless other individuals from the East and the West, men and women from all walks of life, arose to dedicate their life to the teaching work. The urgency associated with the establishment of the faith of Baha'u'llah and its administrative order worldwide, however, required a more systematic approach to the teaching work. To spread the faith to the rest of the world, Abdul Baha in 1915 to 1917 revealed the tablets of divine plan and assigned the fledgling group of Baha'is in the United States and Canada to be its chief executors. Abdul Baha's master plan was first publicly read at one of the sessions of the annual North American Baha'i Convention in 1919. Martha Root, one of the delegates at that convention, was particularly moved by Abdu'l-Baha's call for teaching. When that session of the convention was over, Martha Root was nowhere to be found. She was upstairs packing her bag to leave, losing not an hour before acting on the instructions of Abdu'l-Baha. Martha Root, this small, frail woman who was battling cancer, made travel arrangements to leave at once. Despite ill health, she circled the world 4 times in her teaching work, and Shoghi Effendi called her the foremost travel teacher in the first Baha'i century. And many other such souls traveled across the planet, taking the message of Baha'u'llah to nearly 35 countries across 5 continents. Under the guidance of the beloved guardian, the Baha'i community learned the importance of implementing global plans for the spread of the message of Baha'u'llah, which, among other things, emphasized both individual and collective teaching efforts. The last plan devised by the guardian was the 10-year crusade, and it drew a historic response, as we know, from the believers. Baha'is the world over, relying on the power of divine assistance, sacrificially made changes in their personal and family lives in order to meet the needs of the 10-year crusade. Whether through international or homefront pioneering and teaching the faith with great intensity at home and abroad, whether through generous financial contributions or the offering of other resources, the believers arose at an unprecedented scale to spread the message of Baha'u'llah across the world. At the conclusion of the crusade in 1963, the House of Justice was elected. A few years later, the Baha'i world experienced another surge in teaching work, this time under the guidance of the House of Justice, which then provided for the further spread of the message and the strengthening of the administrative order. This legacy of sacrificial service in teaching has continued in every stage of the divine plan. The result is that 100 years after the passing of Abdu'l-Baha and 64 years after the passing of the beloved guardian, the message of Baha'u'llah had reached every corner of the planet, and Baha'i communities emerged around the world, encompassing the diversity of human race. During the final 25 years of these 100 years, that is from 1996 to 2021, the implementation of a new series of global plans, 5 in total, was focused on learning how to advance the process of entry by troops, how to be more outward looking in what we do, how to build communities based on the divine teachings, how to work with local populations in the small geographic areas, and how to work generally with an ever-increasing number of people from the wider society. The crown of all these achievements was the establishment of a network of training institutes to help build capacities for building more effective teachers of the faith and rendering other services needed for the expansion and consolidation of the community. Highlighting all this progress, the House of Justice said the accomplishment could not have occurred without a tremendous advance in the teaching work. The current 9-year plan was launched in 2022 with clear objectives and projections. The extraordinary rise in capacity that made it possible for the Baha'i world to view its endeavors in terms of the release of the society building power of the faith, opened the way for the cause of God to enter the sixth epoch of its formative age. While the widespread phenomena of large numbers participating in Baha'i activities signaled the commencement of the third epoch of Abdul Baha's divine plan. The followers of Baha'u'llah all over the world and on a more significant scale than ever before began to engage with people of insight and understanding, as it was Baha'u'llah's command, striving to translate that which has been revealed by Baha'u'llah into reality and action. With reference to the 9-year plan, the House of Justice noted in 2022 that such objectives and projections would hardly be feasible if a systematic approach to teaching work and to human resource development had not become increasingly manifest in the Baha'i world. A few weeks before the end of Phase 1 of the 9-year plan, the House of Justice, in its letter of 4th of January 2026, says the devoted, spirited, diverse efforts being made to carry to every receptive heart what the True One has revealed are an abiding cause for admiration and wonder. That same admiration of the Universal House of Justice has clearly been gained by the Canadian Baha'i community, as indicated by the bounty of being chosen to build the first national house of worship in the Western world. The 2026 Canadian National Convention was a testimony to the spirit, the vision, and the will animating the followers of Baha'u'llah in this land to do their share and more during the second phase of the 9-year plan. Having the benefit of holding the convention 2 weeks after a national institutional meeting with a member of the International Teaching Center present, the convention was particularly rich in its spirited consultation. The National Spiritual Assembly guided this consultation and noted that Canada has undergone a shift in perspective since the launching of the 9-year plan, and growth now is from a grassroots perspective with an expanded vision to embrace all. The Assembly noted how clusters of every kind in every setting are advancing together, including across the Northern Territories and among the Indigenous and French Canadian population. While in many localities across the country, the community is an expanding we. Maps of every region with each cluster outlined and colored in a progressively darker shade of green depending on the milestone it had reached, together with a considerable consultation about the concept of an ecosystem of learning, highlighted the commitments to taking more systematic action and to acting in a posture of learning. The role of youth in shaping Canada's bright future came up frequently during the consultation. In short, in the estimation of our National Assembly, in a world that has resigned itself to conditions of fracture and division, the loved ones of God in Canada, whether known as Baha'is or not, are carving a path for the peoples of Canada, enabling them to draw nearer to the threshold of oneness. In light of the foregoing, we can see that it is not that the launching of the 9-year plan was not with unprecedented energy and determination. It wasn't that valuable experience has not been gained. It isn't that progress hasn't been made and our third milestone clusters have not advanced or the movement of our clusters as a whole is slow. It is what the House of Justice said to the councillors recently assembled in the Holy Land. It said, gratified as we are by the progress made, it is evident that a most formidable task lies ahead if each national Baha'i community is to fulfill the aspirations for the movement of clusters that it set for itself when the plan began, and that there is an urgent need to cultivate more broadly the capacities that are required to intensify a program of growth. Following this assessment of the progress of the plan globally, the House of Justice then invites us in its letter of 4th of January 2026 to reflect together, whether in regular community gatherings or within one another's homes, on what has been learned and what has been accomplished worldwide, confident that such a reflection will help us also to consider how our own actions and those of our households could help the aim of the plan to be realized in our own clusters. The delegates to this year's National Convention benefited greatly from an assessment prepared by the National Assembly in consultation with the councillors. One could see that Canada too, proud of her many admirable achievements so far, faces formidable tasks yet to be done. The spirit of the convention will naturally penetrate every cluster in this beautiful land, helping us all to reflect on our services during the second phase of the plan, remembering this guidance of the House of Justice. Whatever form a person's service takes, it emerges from the unique interaction between, on one hand, the needs of the faith, and on the other, the possibilities afforded by the circumstances of each individual and the sacrifices that he or she chooses to make. For me, the words of the House of Justice that our service is affected by the possibilities afforded by the circumstances of each individual and the sacrifices that he or she chooses to make implies also serious reflection on ways we can change our circumstances to create more opportunities to teach the faith and to meet other needs of the divine plan. If I, for instance, see that I do not have enough time to do as much as I want to do for the plan, my next reflection should be on what sacrifices I can make and I'm willing to make to effect changes in my circumstances that will enable me to have more time and to do more. One brilliant reality is that Canada will, around the end of the 9-year plan, have her house of worship open to the public. To have this matchless institution for the unity and well-being of humanity, this collective center of society to promote cordial affection, and this mighty silent teacher of the faith is a unique bounty for a country. The emergence of this house of worship will also no doubt bring the Baha'i Shrine in Montreal, another unique center of spiritual energy, further to the attention of the public. Accordingly, that's my question, what is a befitting response to this, at this time of history, to this twofold gift? What should be the magnitude of the spiritual transformations by then in our nearby clusters, in the clusters of Ontario and Quebec provinces, and indeed across Canada as a whole. In response to the global 9-year plan, Canada's national plan, which includes the plans of each regional council, is designed to realize that magnitude. Any resource offered for that realization would be resources well spent in the path of the divine plan. Already 40 of our clusters have a pattern of activity that engages large numbers. Since 2022, the start of the 9-year plan, significant progress has been made on all fronts across Canada, and we can proudly say the Canadian Baha'i community already welcomes a sizable number of people from the wider society into its activities. The success of the 9-year plan is directly linked to the total number of people from wider society involved in our conversations, activities, and engaged in serving the process. If currently this number on a national average is, say, about one person from wider society for each registered Baha'i in the country, how can it reach perhaps 4 or 5 by the end of the 9-year plan? One effective way for this to happen would be for each one of us to ponder what additional action I and my family can take to contribute to attaining this goal. Many should be able to set a number high enough to make up for those who may not be able to do so, thus bringing our national average to 4 and 5. Parallel with this, it will be necessary for the same individuals, according to the guidance of the House of Justice, to think of what capacity they need to develop so as to be able to fulfill this goal, while the cluster agencies would be sharply focused on the urgent need to cultivate more broadly the capacities that are required to intensify a program of growth. Remember that if the goal we set for ourselves is an easy one, it probably means we are not counting on the power of divine assistance to help us achieve it. Try teaching goals that are challenging, call for daily prayers, beseeching the concourse on high, and require constant reflection and creative efforts for their achievements. Here is a very personal thought for consideration. Under the shadow of the house of worship and the shrine, 100,000 souls in Canada attracted to the vision of Baha'u'llah may be a good tipping point that can turn that number into hundreds of thousands and then a million. The second phase of the 9-year plan is an appropriate time to prepare the base for the realization of such a vision by 2046. The institutions of the faith, continental, national, and regional level, as well as the cluster agencies and the local spiritual assemblies, are eager to accompany us all in our endeavor to achieve our ambitious goals during the next 5 years. They do so based on the insights and guidance of the House of Justice and the valuable experiences accumulated in the world and in Canada. A nationwide surge in teaching can contribute to the realization of this vision and thereby revolutionize our fortunes in Canada. A nationwide surge in teaching means a surge in the number of people from wider society who are attending devotional gatherings, sharing prayers with their neighbors, relatives, and co-workers, and developing the habits of offering prayers at home. A surge in the number of people accessing the Training Institute materials in various circumstances and attending more formal study circles arising to walk in the path of service towards the vision of Baha'u'llah. A surge in the number of youth gathering in special camps and other settings, building their capacity to, among other things, help children and junior youth benefit from special educational programs designed to prepare the younger generations to take forward the work already underway. A surge in the number of parents impressed by the transformation witnessed in their children and consequently searching for ways to play their role in the process. A surge in the number of those who celebrate our holidays and take part in conversations on spiritual themes. And a surge in the number of people who, through other approaches, such as firesides, reading books, articles, and materials online, hear the message of Baha'u'llah and decide to embrace it and bless their lives and the lives of their families through dedicated service to the cause of God. Under the guidance of the institutions of the faith, we are engaged in learning about all these in every cluster in Canada. Each one of us can contribute to all one or more aspect of this surge, and I do not intend to elaborate any more on this. For the remainder of this presentation, I'm going to share with you my personal understanding on some aspects of teaching. The command of Baha'u'llah that God has prescribed unto everyone the duty of teaching his cause is unambiguous. Everyone must teach the faith, and there are no exceptions or excuses. If I am unable to do it for any reason, I should deputize someone to do it on my behalf. The necessity of everyone engaging in the teaching work is also set forth by Abdul Baha, who tells us, "It is clear that in this day, confirmations from the unseen world are encompassing all those who deliver the divine message. Should the work of teaching lapse, these confirmations would be entirely cut off, since it is impossible for the loved ones of God to receive assistance unless they teach." As for the process of teaching, one can teach in whatever way feels comfortable. But it is also vital to note that under the guidance of the head of the faith, fresh dimensions of teaching work comes to light at each stage of the divine plan. Early in the course of learning about the process of community building, the House of Justice clarified that at the core of the program, there must exist a range of teaching efforts involved, both activities undertaken by the individual and campaigns promoted by the institutions. Teaching the cause of God naturally embraces many diverse activities. Essential are efforts to establish genuine friendships beyond which conversations can lead into a direct teaching effort, which can then become a catalyst for an enduring process of spiritual transformation. In this respect, the House of Justice gives us this guidance. Whether the first contact with such newly found friends elicits an invitation for them to enroll in the Baha'i community or to participate in one of its activities is not an overwhelming concern. More important is that every soul feel welcome to join the community in contributing to the betterment of society, commencing a path of service to humanity on which, at the outset or further along, formal enrollment can occur. Towards the end of the first phase of the 9-year plan, in its letter of 31st of December 2025, the House of Justice points out that souls who have been given the blessing of faith have a natural wish to share this gift, the message of Baha'u'llah, through conversations with relatives, friends, classmates, co-workers, and those previously unmet, seeking in every place and at every moment a hearing ear. In this same letter, the House of Justice illustrates for us the dynamics of teaching when it calls upon us to reflect on how large numbers of people could find the faith, become familiar with it, identifying with its aim, join in its activities and deliberations, and in many cases embrace it, implying that we should feel free to let go those in whom we did not find a hearing ear. Further insights in the same letter tells us that the believers increasingly appreciate the privilege of being able to acquaint a soul with the mission of Baha'u'llah, emphasizing the need to lovingly help a soul who stands at the door of the faith to step in. Abdul Baha is quoted as saying, "I have a lamp in my hand, searching through the lands and seas to find souls who can become heralds of the cause," emphasizing that day and night I am engaged in this work. This statement of Abdul Baha confirms to me that in the process of teaching, we are looking for hearing ears who can become heralds of the cause, and that teaching is a work we ought to be engaged in day and night. Rather than considering the art of teaching merely an activity to be undertaken, it looks like a means whereby we make our life purposeful. Consider in the light of this the qualities often associated in the Baha'i writings with teachings, qualities such as enthusiasm, devotion, radiance, reliance on God, tact, constancy, and vitality. Much remains to be learned, dear friends, about the process of teaching, that is, learning by doing and benefiting from the courses of the Training Institute. Youth have always shone resplendent by teaching the faith to their friends and by helping to illumine the lives of a generation younger than themselves. Every individual youth will surely do well to make a personal plan to increase the number of his or her friends from the wider society, expand his or her association with them, encourage and facilitate meaningful conversations based on youth materials, for instance, and invite those who are interested to participate in the Institute courses, hence initiating the emergence of a youth movement in their neighborhood. Youth have also been called upon to view the future development of the Training Institute as their sacred task. Youth being not just among the most capable people in the society, but also among the most receptive population, remain a key group to help bring about a surge in the teaching work. In engaging those with hearing ears around us in a conversation about the faith and assisting them to take action to learn to translate the vision of Baha'u'llah into reality, we may find it helpful to imagine them as being a group of friends in concentric circles, whereby the more intensely involved they are, the closer they move to the center. Maintaining a list of their names will surely facilitate regular reflection on the advancement of each soul in his or her own spiritual development. Careful considerations of how each person can be nurtured to take the next step to their path of service is clearly a vital activity, and we have valuable guidance on how to do this. Adopting a more systematic approach towards teaching the faith has always been emphasized in the guidance of the beloved guardian and the House of Justice. Having individual teaching plan is a good practical first step in this regard. In 1996, at the start of the new series of global plans, the House of Justice told us that in responding to the global, national, and regional plans, each individual too must make a conscious decision as to what he or she will do to serve the plan and as to how, where, and when to do it. This determination enables the individual, the House of Justice says, to check the progress of his actions and, if necessary, to modify the steps being taken. Becoming accustomed to such a procedure of systematic striving lends meaning and fulfillment to the life of any Baha'i. In our teaching plans, time, energy, space, and arrangements for engaging with people should also be elaborated. Learning how to release society-building power of the faith in ever greater measure particularly calls for a systematic approach to whatever we do. Goal setting is also helpful in adopting a systematic approach to teaching work. Our individual teaching plans ought to obviously include goals supporting the teaching work organized by the institutions, as well as activities initiated by ourselves. The House of Justice says, as far as the teaching work is concerned, just as individuals are called upon to adopt teaching goals, the family itself could adopt its own goals. It says, as the friends ponder what is before them, they will directly see that for every community there is a goal in reach, and for every goal a path to reach it. Identifying a path for the achievement of each goal, periodic assessment of progress, modifying goals and actions when needed, all of these will contribute to accelerating the systematization of teaching. The statement of the House of Justice that becoming accustomed to a procedure of systematic teaching lends meaning and fulfillment to the life of any Baha'i should encourage every one of us to try harder to be systematic in our teaching work. If individuals discover that it is not necessarily easy for them to be systematic, then they know that learning is the way. Perseverance in adopting a posture of learning, prayers, and reflection will certainly be of incalculable help. Examples of individual teaching goals can be seen in the admonition of Abdul Baha for every Baha'i to lead at least one new soul to the faith each year, and in the related calls made by the beloved guardian. Given that, in the words of the House of Justice, the 9-year plan comprises two essentially spiritual undertakings, that is, if you remember, diffusing the light of Baha'u'llah's revelation ever more widely and extending the roots of his faith ever more deeply into the soil of society, and that each have measurable outcomes, and at the same time, given the emphasis on the urgent need to increase the number of people who are able and ready to dedicate their times and energy to the work of the plan, it is natural for any discerning teacher of the faith to set goals related to both undertakings. For instance, the number of people from the wider society that he or she will acquaint with the message of Baha'u'llah, the number of people with hearing ears to become protagonists of the plan, and for a number of them to enter the faith. Setting such goals is far from and has nothing to do with coercing people into serving or into acceptance of the faith, since such acts and proselytizing are not permitted in the faith. How many people one would like to have in his or her concentric circles at any one time will, of course, naturally be different from person to person. One other important approach that has the potential to assist us to become more systematic in our teaching effort is to be part of a small group of family or individual friends who gather regularly to pray, to study the guidance of the Universal House of Justice, and serve the needs of the divine plan. One dimension of growth in every cluster is indeed for the generality of the believers, wherever they live in the cluster, to be engaged in systematic teaching by families and individual believers working together creatively and intelligently, applying the plan's framework for action to the reality of their own circumstances wherever in the cluster they live, set about widening the circle of participation in their activities by engaging with the networks to which they belong. Networks created through a place of work or study, a local school, or a community hub of another kind, and by accompanying others who arise to serve alongside them. Networks can also include other natural groupings such as women or youth, farmers or educators, and animators or children's class teachers, often with a supportive network of friends. Groups of this kind, making use of their small settings, can learn together how to set about organizing their work, their own efforts to improve some aspects of the life of the community, and they promote broader participation in those efforts. By doing so, using the diverse capabilities of different individual members, they learn how to help the growth and development of the community to become self-perpetuating, and they are doing so without the need for new layers of administrative structure. These friends will find it easier to develop the basic capabilities for acting in a posture of learning. Forming such group is a practical response to the wish of the House of Justice that says there must emerge in many hundreds of clusters a growing band of believers who can maintain with those around them a sustained focus on nurturing growth and building capacity, and who are distinguished by their ability and their discipline to reflect on action and learn from experience. Forming such groups will also meet the needs of the inescapable conclusion presented by the House of Justice in its Rizwan 2024 message that there must be a sustained, rapid rise in the number of those committing their time, their energy, their concentration to the process of this work, the work of the plan. With this approach, the work of implementing the imperatives of the 9-year plan reaches yet closer to the grassroots, thus making it much easier to learn how to release society-building power of the faith in ever greater measure. I understand that the Regional Baha'i Council of Ontario has an initiative to encourage more friends to consider this approach as a way of serving the divine plan in their clusters. while there would be those who joyfully engage individually or as a family in the process of systematic teaching, there will also be those who may find it beneficial to engage in the teaching work as a member of a small group of individuals and or families. Friends can form their groups and begin to function as soon as they wish. The accompaniment of those who may need guidance to form such groups and function according to the guidance of the House of Justice may take time. But the sooner a cluster acts on this, the better the result will be at the end of the 9-year plan. The widespread negative impressions and deep mistrust of religion that exists due to corruption, oppression, cruelty, and injustices perpetrated in its name has caused many to have a distasteful and objectionable initial reaction to anything classified as religion. With this conception of religion in their mind, people often see religion as basically incapable of responding to the demands of modern life, and therefore as being irrelevant to the betterment of the world. In describing the success of teaching work in previous plans, the House of Justice notes in its 2021 Resvan message that implied in all this was a conception of religion very different from those holding sway in the world at large. How vital, therefore, it is that we learn how to introduce the message of Baha'u'llah to others, not as another religion or even as a new religion, but rather as a new conception of religion. The importance of being mindful of language is not limited to this. In 2018, the House of Justice told one National Assembly that communities could inadvertently place a mental and administrative obstacle in the way of people's declaration of their acceptance of Baha'u'llah. It gave as an example when the term Friends of the Faith assumes a common usage as a kind of permanent category of people. A situation that can make the people who, in a sense, are advancing in their relationship with Baha'u'llah face unintended constraints on how their connection to the cause progresses. Use of appropriate language for teaching is one of the several factors for reflection when the House of Justice asks the believers, wherever they reside, to reflect periodically on effective ways of teaching the faith in their surroundings. I come finally to a very central piece of guidance about teaching, namely the role of the Training Institute in promoting teaching work and strengthening the community building process. Early in the process, the House of Justice said, at the core of the program must lie a sound and steady process of expansion matched by an equally strong process of human resource development. Over the past 30 years, friends, the validity of this approach has been proven beyond any doubt. In its letter dated 30th of December 2021, the House of Justice says an important dimension of this work, that's the teaching work, is the capacity to engage in conversations on spiritual themes, a capacity which is developed through participation in institute courses and by gaining practical experience. This clear and direct guidance points out to the vital role of the Training Institute courses in boosting the teaching work and in establishing a sustainable process of expansion and consolidation in a cluster. It makes it obvious that efforts to bring about a surge in teaching cannot be undertaken in isolation from systematic endeavors to strengthen the training institute at the cluster level. This guidance, however, does not exempt any individual from teaching the faith, even if that individual has not or is not participating in the training institute courses for whatever reasons. The House of Justice says, while it is highly desirable to include seekers in study circles wherever possible, the individual retains the inescapable duty to teach the faith on his own or her own initiative. We all must teach, and a high percentage of Baha'is and those with hearing ears should be encouraged and assisted to attend the institute courses. In a skeptical world, as we endeavor to enhance our capacities for presenting the message of Baha'u'llah, to outline the nature and function of the Training Institute, and to articulate the current process of community building, there will always be those who will not respond immediately to our invitation to participate in the core activities. Experience, however, has shown everywhere that after becoming familiar with the life of Baha'u'llah and his vision for humanity, and after meaningful conversations about the situations of the world, conversations that would move thoughtfully to the Baha'i approach to the betterment of the world, there are those whose worldview changes and who are happy to join our activities in the neighborhood. Souls receptive to the message of Baha'u'llah also exist everywhere. We need to learn the most effective way to spreading the message among them until we find the receptive souls. We also need to learn how to discern receptivity to the faith. The House of Justice advises that, conscious of the forces of integration and disintegration operating in society today, we should see the relationship between the rise in receptivity of the faith in all parts of the world and the failings of the world systems. The House of Justice explains that such receptivity will increase as the agonies of humanity deepen. Receptivity, in the words of the House of Justice, can manifest itself in a willingness to participate in the process of community building set in motion by the core activities, and in a rise in the number of those involved in meaningful conversations. No doubt any teacher of the faith who desires success in guiding people to Baha'u'llah's message will also adhere to what the beloved guardian emphasized when he counseled an individual that, in addition to your usual teaching work, you make a special point of praying ardently, not only for success in general, but that God may send to you the souls that are ready. So, more exciting than receptive souls are ready souls, to whom the beloved guardian refers, saying, these are people who would, once they hear it, readily accept the message of Baha'u'llah. He says there are such souls in every city, but then warns that to find them and make the right contact is not easy. This reality is a good news on the one hand, and on the other, the difficulty in finding these souls may cause some friends to begin having a sense of inadequacy, lack of courage and of initiative, and a feeling of inferiority that sometimes hampers individual initiative. Such friends would no doubt find it helpful to reflect on the loving advice of the Secretary of the Guardian, who writes on his behalf, it is precisely these weaknesses that he wishes the friends to overcome. For these do not only paralyze their efforts, but actually serve to quench the flame of faith in their hearts. Not until all the friends come to realize that every one of them is able in his own measures to deliver the message can they ever hope to reach the goal that has been set before them by a loving and wise master. Everyone is a potential teacher. He has only to use what God has given him and thus prove that he is faithful to his trust. Others may become frustrated, frustrations that at times are due to their desire to see more rapid growth of the faith, or because of entertaining an ever anxiousness about a breakthrough and an undue worry over the state of society. Such friends would also do well to listen to the guidance of the House of Justice that having such frustrations can be counterproductive. The House of Justice further says, while there are opportunities for greater growth than is occurring, the believers should not burden themselves with feelings of failure at every disappointment, for such feelings are self-fulfilling and can easily cause a stagnation in the expansion of the cause. The Supreme Body then gives this loving piece of advice. The tendency towards frustration, sometimes induced by a desire for instant gratification, must be resisted by an effort to gain deeper appreciation of the divine process. That divine process, as described by Shoghi Effendi, is this. Every bearer of the message of Baha'u'llah should consider it not only an obligation but a privilege to scatter far and wide the seeds of his faith and to rest content with the abiding knowledge that whatever be the immediate response to that message, and however inadequate the vehicle that conveyed it, the power of its author will, as he sees fit, enable those seeds to germinate, and in circumstances which no one can foresee, enrich the harvest which the labor of his followers will gather. In other words, regardless of how inadequate I may feel as a vehicle to convey the message of Baha'u'llah to people, I am planting the seeds of his message in their hearts. It is Baha'u'llah himself who, in ways unknown to us, will, as he sees it fit, cause those seeds to germinate, and thereby the Baha'i community will reap a rich harvest. The more we understand this divine process, the more we will appreciate the profoundness of the spiritual obligation resting on us, that is, to make the mandate of teaching so vitally binding upon all, the all-pervading concern of our lives. Dear friends, a lot more can be said about teaching. But teaching is not a complex task. It is rather a simple story of love. It is allowing our love for Baha'u'llah and for humanity to cascade unrestrained. It is allowing the power of the covenant to mold our lives, and it is allowing the power of prayer to guide our steps. The Universal House of Justice, in its Rizwan 2026 message, reminds us to rely on the bounties of God, and so to be ever hopeful, to be firm in our hope, and to be the cause of hope to the despairing soul and to look to the wronged yet ever patient, ever steadfast, ever resilient followers of Baha'u'llah in Iran as our example, saying, "See how disciplined they have remained, how committed to principle over decades of unrelenting oppression, and how resolved they have been to learn from the advances made by their fellow believers in other lands, how determined to serve and console their fellow citizens in their own land. To see many of their compatriots, they have been and continue to be a beacon of hope, a fount of compassion and insight, and trusted companions on the path of service." The world situation, friends, is going from bad to worse. Among this chaos, the peoples of the world are showing that the central teachings of Baha'u'llah are the aspiration of the majority. But a lack of vision and not knowing how to bring about a coherent and dynamic system or pattern of collective life has paralyzed the people such that they are unable to act. However, the day is approaching when a devastated and bewildered humanity will be looking more seriously for a solution. The responsibility of those dedicated and attracted souls to the vision of Baha'u'llah is to build a sufficiently large and diverse model of a community shaped by the divine teachings, so that at the right time and under the appropriate conditions, it will attract the attention of the human race, help it see the indispensability of that model for the attainment of humanity's well-being and bright future. We should remember that, in the words of the House of Justice, the greater the human resources, the greater our capacity to bring the wisdom contained in Baha'u'llah's revelation to bear upon the challenges of the day. At every crucial stage of the development of the faith, of the divine plan, a surge in teaching has been instrumental in assisting the community to rise and meet the requirements of the plan. At this crucial time, at the commencement of the second phase of the 9-year plan, the House of Justice expects us to be swift to act and swift to learn. Whatever other services we render to the faith, let us ensure that teaching the cause of God is the dominant passion of our lives. I will end with these words of the Supreme Body. Looking back over one's life, there can be no greater joy and comfort than to know that it was spent in acute awareness of the divine remedy, that no effort was spared to proffer that remedy to receptive souls, and that when opportunity was at hand, even in the midst of difficulties, every chance was seized to respond to humanity's intense need. Thank you, dear friends, for your patience.